47 applicants stood inside the marble lobby of Halden Strategic Systems in downtown Denver, each one wearing a tailored black suit, each one carrying the kind of confidence that came from being used to lock doors opening for them. Then the revolving door turned, and Ethan Cole walked in wearing a faded canvas jacket, scuffed work boots, and a tie that looked like it had been folded in a glove box. The laughter started before he reached the registration desk. One man near the front whispered, "Maintenance interview is probably downstairs." Ethan heard him. He just kept walking. The lobby of Halden Strategic Systems was too clean for a Monday morning. The floors reflected the ceiling lights in long white strips. The security desk smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. Behind the glass wall, downtown Denver was waking up under a pale winter sky, traffic crawling between office towers and delivery trucks. Halden was not famous to ordinary people, but the people who mattered knew the name. It built encrypted infrastructure for hospitals, banks, defense suppliers, airports, and emergency networks across the country. Its clients did not buy software. They bought silence. That morning, the company was hiring a new director of protective operations. The job had drawn former federal agents, private security executives, ex-military contractors, cybersecurity consultants, and men who had spent half their careers learning how to make a room feel smaller when they entered it. Ethan Cole looked like a man who had come to fix a broken furnace. His jacket had a dark stain near one cuff. His hair was cut short but not styled. He carried no leather folder, no polished resume binder, no expensive watch. Only a small weathered notebook in his left hand and a metal lunchbox with a dent across the lid. Marissa Hale, CEO of Halden, was watching the lobby feed from the 36th floor. She did not know yet that the man everyone had laughed at would be the only reason she still had a company by Friday night. She only knew one thing. He did not look away when people mocked him, and that interested her. The first assessment was supposed to be simple. Each candidate was given a simulated breach scenario, a conference center, 2 exits blocked, 3 VIPs inside, 1 unknown hostile actor, 48 seconds of camera footage, and 90 seconds to give a response plan. Most of the applicants gave polished answers. They spoke about evacuation lanes, layered defense, radio channels, threat isolation, command hierarchy, and media containment. Some were very good. A few were excellent. Then Ethan stepped up. He watched the footage once. Not twice, once. "There are 4 threats," he said. The assessor looked down at the sheet. "The exercise lists 3. Ethan nodded toward the screen. "The 4th is the technician near the west service door. He checks his badge twice but never actually scans it. His left sleeve is pulled down past the wrist, probably hiding a temporary access band. He looks bored but his feet are set wrong. He's waiting for timing." The room got quieter. Ethan continued, voice low, almost tired. "The camera angle at the north hallway has been looped for 6 seconds. The reflection on the floor repeats before the woman in the blue coat reaches the column. That means the breach started before the obvious threat appears." No one laughed that time. By lunch, 3 people had started asking who he was. By 2 o'clock, the answer had become a problem. Ethan Cole had no public security profile, no corporate website, no agency page, no LinkedIn history that made sense. His resume was 1 page long. Most of it was blank by design. At the bottom, there was 1 sentence. Verification available upon request. The acting head of security, Brett Carver, hated him immediately. Brett was 41, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, and dressed like a man who believed competence should always look expensive. He had spent 7 years climbing Halden's internal ladder. The director role was supposed to be his. Everyone knew it. He had already moved into the larger office beside the operations floor, though no one had officially given it to him. Then Marissa Hale had opened the search externally. Then Ethan Cole had appeared. Brett watched him from across the room with a smile that never reached his eyes. "You always show up to executive interviews dressed like a tow truck driver?" Brett asked. Ethan looked down at his jacket, as if checking whether the question had merit. "No," he said. "Sometimes it's colder." A few men laughed, but not loudly. They were no longer sure which side of the joke was safe. The physical response test came last. It was not meant to be a fight. Not officially. It was a close protection control drill, designed to test balance, reaction time, restraint, and judgment under pressure. Brett adjusted the pairings himself. He put Ethan against Grant Holloway. Grant had spent 12 years in executive protection, 6 years in competitive combat sports, and had forearms like bridge cables. He was not cruel, exactly. He simply believed size, experience, and reputation were facts of nature. When he saw Ethan's name beside his, Grant smiled. "Sorry, man," he said, stepping onto the mat. "Nothing personal." Ethan placed his notebook and lunchbox beside the wall. "That's usually best," he said. From the 36th floor, Marissa Hale stood from her desk. Her assistant, Claire Morgan, looked at the monitor and said, "They paired him with Holloway." Marissa was already walking toward the elevator. "I saw." The training floor fell silent when she entered. Brett moved toward her at once. "Mrs. Hale, this is just standard procedure." Marissa did not look at him. She looked at Ethan. He was retying his right boot. Not stretching, not posturing, not measuring Grant Holloway like a rival. Just tying his boot carefully, as if loose laces were the only unacceptable risk in the room. The timer started. Grant came forward fast. Ethan moved half a step, that was all. Grant's first grip missed by less than an inch, but the miss changed everything. His weight shifted too far over his front foot. Ethan touched his wrist, turned slightly, and lets Grant's own forward pressure carry him past the line he thought he controlled. People expected a struggle. There wasn't one. On the second engagement, Grant tried to correct with force. Ethan gave him a narrow opening, waited for him to commit, then changed the angle at the elbow and hip with such quiet precision that Grant's feet left the mat before his face understood what had happened. He landed hard, not injured, just finished, 14 seconds. Ethan stepped back, breathing normally. Grant stayed down for a moment, staring at the mat like it had betrayed him. Brett's jaw tightened. Marissa Hale said nothing. But she noticed Ethan reach for his lunchbox before his notebook. That detail stayed with her. The interview on the 36th floor lasted 18 minutes. Marissa's office overlooked the city, but it did not feel warm. The furniture was expensive and unused in the way furniture became when no one sat long enough to belong there. There were no family photos, no plants, no personal mess. Only a glass desk, a closed laptop, a wall of legal binders, and a gray coffee mug with a hairline crack near the handle. Ethan noticed the crack. Marissa noticed him noticing. "You don't have much on paper," she said. "Enough to verify. Why Halden?" He looked at her for a moment before answering. "Because someone thinks you're in trouble." Marissa did not move. Claire, standing near the door, glanced up. "Who?" Marissa asked. "I don't know. That's a convenient answer." It's still the answer. She studied him. People usually filled silence around her. They explained too much. They tried to soften edges, sell themselves, flatter without appearing to flatter. Ethan did none of that. "What do you want?" she asked. "A fair salary, clear authority inside my lane, no ceremonial security theater. That's all?" "No," he said. "I don't work for people who lie to me when the building is on fire." For the first time that day, Marissa almost smiled. She hired him before sunset. Brett Carver received the notice on his phone in the parking garage. For several seconds, he just stared at it. Then he made a call. He spoke only 6 words. She brought in the wrong man. By Wednesday, Ethan had become a rumor. People watched how he moved through Halden's headquarters. He never seemed hurried, but he was never late. He stood 1 pace behind Marissa at public entrances, half a pace to her left in elevators, and slightly ahead when glass doors opened into uncontrolled areas. He checked reflections without turning his head. He read badge readers by sound. He noticed when a conference room chair had been moved 3 inches from its usual position. At first, Marissa found it excessive. Then she realized he was right too often. On Thursday morning, before a meeting with a federal banking client, Ethan paused outside conference room 6. "What?" Marissa asked. "Someone was in here after cleaning." "How do you know?" "The blinds are closed halfway. Cleaning opens them all the way. Legal closes them completely. Halfway means someone wanted light without visibility." Inside, beneath the table, Ethan found a wireless listening device smaller than a shirt button. No one in the room spoke for almost 10 seconds. Brett arrived 2 minutes later and called it probably vendor negligence. Ethan looked at him. "Probably," he said. That was the moment Marissa understood something had changed. Not because of the device. Because Brett looked afraid for half a second before he looked angry. The first anonymous email came that night. Marissa was alone in her office, eating half a turkey sandwich she had forgotten to unwrap until it was almost dry. The city lights reflected in the glass beside her face. Her coffee had gone cold hours earlier. The subject line was empty. The message contained 9 words. "They are not buying your company, they are taking it." Attached was a redacted excerpt from a merger framework agreement between Halden Strategic Systems and Northbridge Meridian. a private investment firm led by Conrad Vale. Marissa had signed the agreement 6 months earlier. She had read every page. At least she thought she had. The excerpt highlighted Section 11, a performance-triggered control clause buried inside language her legal team had described as standard protective alignment. Her fingers rested on the keyboard. She did not type. For the first time in years, Marissa Hale felt the cold, specific fear of realizing the room she was standing in might already belong to someone else. Ethan stood near the window. She had forgotten he was there. "Did you know about this?" she asked. "Not until yesterday," her eyes lifted. "What happened yesterday?" "I found the first gap." "What gap?" 11 minutes missing from the West Garage camera archive. She stood slowly. That system can't lose footage. It didn't lose it. The office felt smaller after that. Over the next 5 days, Ethan built a picture from pieces no one else had thought to connect. A maintenance contractor badge used twice after expiration. A board packet accessed at 2:13 a.m. from a terminal that had been powered down. A Northbridge consultant entering through the loading dock under a misspelled name. A parking ticket validated by Brett Carver's assistant for a vehicle that never entered the visitor log. None of it proved enough alone. Together, it had weight. Marissa watched Ethan work from the edge of her office one evening. He sat at the small conference table with 3 screens open, his sleeves rolled up, the dented lunchbox beside his elbow. Inside it, she had once seen a folded photograph, an old mechanical pencil, and a silver wedding ring on a chain. He never wore the ring. He never explained it. At 9:40 p.m., she walked over and set a fresh coffee beside him. He looked at it like she had handed him something fragile. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know." He went back to the screen. After a while, she asked, "Who was she?" His hand stopped above the keyboard. Marissa almost withdrew the question, but he reached into the lunchbox and touched the chain without taking it out. "Rebecca," he said. A long pause. "She died 4 years ago. Hospital ransomware attack in Milwaukee. Backup generator failed during the transfer. Systems were down 23 minutes. Marissa did not speak. Ethan's face did not change much, but his voice had lowered in a way that made the room careful around him. "I was leading the team that traced the breach afterward. Found the people who did it. Found the money trail. Found everything except a way to make those 23 minutes matter less." He closed the lunchbox. "That's why I don't like gaps in systems." The next morning, Marissa moved his office from the security floor to the suite beside hers. Brett Carver saw the change happen, and something inside him hardened. Conrad Vale arrived in Denver on a private jet 2 days before the emergency shareholder session. He was 63, silver-haired, elegant, and soft-spoken, in the way dangerous men often become when they no longer need volume. He shook hands with warmth. He remembered assistants' names. He asked about spouses, weather, traffic, charity boards, and golf injuries. People liked him because he made liking him feel profitable. At dinner, he sat across from Marissa in a private room at a restaurant above Union Station. Snow moved past the windows in thin white lines. The waiter poured wine that neither of them drank much of. Conrad spoke about partnership. He spoke about stability. He spoke about protecting Halden's legacy. Then he said gently, "Of course, the Section 11 transition will make things easier for everyone after Friday." Marissa kept her fork still. Ethan stood near the door, eyes on the room, not on the conversation. Conrad smiled as though he had offered comfort. "You've built something impressive, Marissa. No one is disputing that. But founders and operators often struggle to see when stewardship needs to evolve." "I'm not the founder," she said. "No," Conrad said, "but you have the same disease." There it was, not anger, not threat, ownership. In the car afterward, Marissa looked out at the snow gathering along the curb. "Did you hear him?" she asked. "Yes, he thinks I'm already gone." Ethan checked the rearview mirror. "No," he said. "He needs you to think that." She turned toward him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The heater hummed against the windshield. The traffic light ahead turned green, then yellow, then red again before the line of cars moved. Marissa looked at his reflection in the mirror. "You don't scare easily, do you?" Ethan's hand stayed steady on the wheel. "I do." She waited. "I just try not to give fear the steering wheel." Friday came with freezing rain. By 7 in the morning, downtown Denver was silver and wet, the sidewalks shining under office lights. Halden's lobby filled with lawyers, shareholders, board members, senior executives, outside consultants, and men who smiled too cleanly. The emergency session was scheduled for 10. By 10:30, Conrad Vale intended to control Halden. By noon, If Ethan's reconstruction was right, someone inside the building intended to copy the company's core client encryption architecture during the confusion. By 1, the theft would look like a transition error. By evening, Halden would be dead in every way that mattered, even if the sign stayed on the building. Ethan found the final clue at 8:18. A service elevator had been locked between floors for 42 seconds overnight. No maintenance order, no error alert, no camera trigger, just 42 seconds of deliberate blindness. He stood in the security operations room, staring at the timestamp, while the fluorescent lights buzzed above him. His old wedding ring lay warm against his chest beneath his shirt. Brett entered behind him. "You're making everyone nervous," Brett said. Ethan did not turn. "You should be upstairs, so should you." "I'm working." Brett stepped closer. "You know what your problem is, Cole? You think being quiet makes you noble." Ethan finally looked at him. "No, I think being quiet makes it easier to hear." For a second, Brett's face showed everything. Resentment, fear. The exhaustion of a man who had made one wrong compromise, and then built a whole personality around defending it. "You don't understand what was happening here before you came in," Brett said. "This place was already slipping. Marissa was going to run it into the ground, trying to be untouchable. So you sold her out to protect the company?" Brett's eyes sharpened. "I protected order." "No," Ethan said. "You protected the version of the company where you mattered more." Brett's hand moved slightly. Not much. Enough. Ethan saw it. The building alarm did not sound when the breach team entered. That was how Ethan knew Brett had gone all the way. 4 men came through the East Service corridor at 9:37, wearing contractor jackets and carrying equipment cases. They moved like people who knew exactly where cameras were supposed to be looking. One had a cloned access badge. One had a signal jammer. One had a compact drive array designed for fast extraction. They expected an empty floor. They found Ethan Cole. What happened in the hallway later became a rumor inside Halden, then a whispered story, then something no one repeated accurately, because the truth sounded too simple. He did not fight like a movie hero. He fought like a man solving a sequence of urgent problems. The first man lost balance when Ethan drove the equipment case into his knee and pinned his wrist against the wall. The second reached for the jammer and hit the floor before his fingers closed around it. The third tried to retreat toward the stairwell, but Ethan had already blocked the angle with a maintenance cart he had moved there 20 minutes earlier. The fourth was the largest. He lasted the longest 9 seconds. By 9:41, 3 men were restrained with cable ties from their own equipment case. And the fourth was unconscious beside a copier that had printed half a page of quarterly projections before the paper jammed. Then Brett appeared at the far end of the corridor holding a gun. The hallway became very still. "Move away from the door," Brett said. Ethan stood between him and the server room. Rain tapped lightly against the windows behind them. "Brett," Ethan said, "you still have one chance to stop being worse than your worst decision." Brett's jaw trembled once. "You think I wanted this?" "No, I gave this company 9 years. I know. I gave it everything." Ethan's voice stayed quiet. "And then you decided it owed you its soul." Brett's eyes flickered. For the first time, doubt entered him not as fear, but as recognition. Then his grip tightened again. The final movement happened quickly. A door opened behind Brett. Claire Morgan, Marissa's assistant, stepped into the corridor holding a fire extinguisher with both hands and the terrified determination of someone who had never done anything like this in her life. Brett turned. Ethan moved. The gun struck the floor and slid under a bench. Brett hit the wall hard enough to knock the breath from him, but Ethan caught his collar before he fell and lowered him down, instead of letting his head strike the tile. That detail mattered later. Brett remembered it. Upstairs in the boardroom, Conrad Vale was speaking when Marissa received the message. Secured. Evidence intact. Police inbound. She read it once. Then she placed her phone face down on the table. Conrad was mid-sentence, discussing leadership continuity and fiduciary obligation with the calm of a man arranging furniture in a house he already believed he owned. Marissa let him finish. Then she stood. "This session is adjourned pending a criminal investigation." The room shifted. Conrad smiled politely. "Marissa, I understand this is difficult." "No," she said. "You understand leverage. You mistook it for truth." His smile faded by degrees. She turned to the board. "At this moment, law enforcement is taking custody of 4 unauthorized individuals, apprehended outside our secure server room. We also have documentation connecting Northbridge Meridian representatives to access fraud, contract manipulation, and attempted data theft. Conrad did not stand. He looked smaller sitting still. Not weak, just suddenly human. Marissa looked back at him. Section 11 is void under fraud provisions. Your acquisition attempt ends today. The silence in the room had weight. Outside, sirens approached through the freezing rain. Brett Carver was arrested at 10:26 a.m. He did not shout. He did not deny it. He walked with his head slightly lowered, as if listening to something inside himself that had finally become louder than his excuses. At the elevator, he looked back once. Ethan stood near the security desk with blood on his sleeve and a split above his eyebrow. Brett's mouth moved. At first, no sound came out. Then he said, "I thought I was saving it." Ethan looked at him for a long moment. "No," he said, "but you can tell the truth now." Months later, that was exactly what Brett did. His testimony helped dismantle Conrad Vale's operation. Northbridge Meridian lost contracts, partners, and eventually its license to manage several regulated funds. Conrad was indicted on multiple counts related to corporate fraud and conspiracy. His downfall was not theatrical. It was paperwork, depositions, frozen accounts, attorneys leaving through side doors, and reporters waiting under gray courthouse steps. That was more fitting. Men like Conrad did not fear shouting. They feared records. Brett received prison time, but less than he could have. Not because he was innocent. Because he cooperated fully, named everyone involved, and admitted in court that he had confused ambition with loyalty until he could no longer tell the difference. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Brett stood with both hands on the table. He looked older than he had 3 months earlier. "I told myself I was protecting a company," he said, "but I was protecting my pride, and pride is a coward when it gets dressed up as principle." No one in the courtroom moved. Ethan sat in the back row. Marissa sat beside him. Neither of them spoke. That evening, Ethan returned to his apartment on the west side of Denver. It was a small place above a locksmith shop, with an old radiator that knocked in the walls and a kitchen window that looked toward an alley where snow collected in uneven ridges. There were unpaid bills clipped neatly beside the fridge, a cracked mug in the sink, and a stack of technical manuals on the table beside a grocery receipt and a half-sharpened pencil. He took off his jacket slowly. His shoulder still hurt in cold weather. On the table sat the dented lunchbox. For years, it had carried things he did not know where else to put. Rebecca's photograph, the ring, small notes, old access badges, grief folded into ordinary metal. He opened it. Then he took out the ring on its chain and placed it beside the cracked mug. Not away, just outside. A knock came at the door. He knew it was Marissa before he opened it. She stood in the hallway wearing a dark coat, her hair damp from snow, holding a small potted plant in one hand and a paper bag in the other. "I brought dinner," she said. He looked at the plant. "What's that?" "A peace lily." He considered it. "I don't know how to keep plants alive." "Neither do I." That almost made him smile. She stepped inside, and for a while they said very little. They ate takeout from paper containers at the small kitchen table, while the radiator knocked and traffic hissed outside on wet pavement. Marissa noticed the ring beside the mug, but she did not ask about it. Ethan noticed her noticing. He did not put it away. After dinner, she walked to the window and looked down at the alley. "You saved my company," she said. "No," Ethan said from the table. "You did. I just kept the door closed long enough." She turned back. There were things she could have said then. Elegant things, CEO things. Words about gratitude, trust, partnership, rebuilding. Instead, she looked at the plant on the counter. "I think your apartment needed something alive in it." Ethan followed her gaze. The peace lily leaned slightly to one side, unimpressive and stubborn in its cheap plastic pot. Outside, Denver moved through another cold night, indifferent and bright. Ethan picked up Rebecca's ring, held it once in his palm, then set it gently back beside the mug. For the first time in a long while, the room did not feel like a place where someone had been left behind. It felt like a place where someone might return.